guys, I'm Audrey Shantz and I'm a watercolor artist and a watercolor teacher, and we are on day 28 of a 30-day watercolor tips and tricks series. So if you're interested in learning watercolor and this is your first video, you got a lot of them here to learn kind of a basic understanding of watercolor. So day 28 is about blooms, and if you've got your calendar, make sure you're marking it off. It's so fun to watch that progress. Here is what we are going to be painting today, something that looks like this. I love it. So this is like a ginkgo shape of a leaf, I think, and once again, I never really think of it in terms of that. I'm like, I like this shape of leaf. So that's what we're going to do today. And I know you've seen this before. It's just something I like to doodle. So it's a good way to teach the basic concept of what blooms are. So your supplies that you're going to need for today are what we use on all of our videos. They are linked below, but we have water and a towel, watercolor paints, a size 10 round watercolor brush, looks like this, and we're going to be working on a 3" by 3" piece of paper. This is watercolor paper for sure. And if you have a little spray bottle, that is great. If you have a pencil and a kneaded eraser, that is great, because we are going to sketch first, and then if you have a heat gun or an old hair dryer, that's going to be helpful as well. So let's go ahead and read about blooms. So if you've got your little free printable, we're going to look at day 28. So let's do it. Okay, blooms or cauliflower. Cauliflowering. Cauliflower effects happen when a wet area of paint comes into contact with a drier area, causing the wet paint to have a spreading effect into the drier paint. I just feel like I want to read it again. Blooms or cauliflower effects happen when a wet area of paint comes into contact with a drier area. So it's drying after the drier paint, right? Causing the wet paint to have a spreading effect into the drier paint. I am going to show you a good example of one of them, and I'm just going to point to it right here. Do you see that? Not that well. No, you don't. So I'm going to turn around the camera and we're going to look at it that way. But basically what we're going to practice today is putting in our paint in uneven ways. I'm going to give you chances to see cauliflowering or blooms happen. So just realize the first one's already drying, the next one comes in, and basically the water creeps into the paint that's already drying. And that's it. So make sure you've got something in a mug. Maybe you've got your candle lit and you're comfy, and we will go ahead and get started. Okay, I'm going to show you some good examples of cauliflowering. So do you see this? What happened was this layer here was wetter than the dark purple that you see. And you see, that's what it means. Let's see if we can focus, by that creeping into the other one. So there's an example. You can see it more down here. You can see it happening here. And all that we need to make sense of that is knowing that these are drying at different times. But look how beautiful it is. I love it. And you can see it all over the place on this one. And this, I do have a video of how to do these irises, but it's just one versus the whole thing. But that is a better example than what we're going to do today. But I think it's a little bit tricky to teach you because it's about timing. So we can move this out of the way. And on this one, the one I was pointing to was this one. I think turned out pretty good. But it's happening in small ways here and here. And it's like a color bleed, but it's just really about that drying time. So you can see it in little places all over. So our goal today in trying to create it is going to be to paint and then just keep chunking in the paint at different times and see what you get. That's how we're going to do it. So I taught you about it, so this counts, okay? I'm going to look at both of these and decide which one I want. They're basically similar, except this one over here has one extra stem coming up and over. So I think we are going to use this one because it has, I think, the best bloom on it. I'm going to move this out of the way. And we'll press lightly with our pencil, but we will do the sketch first. I think it's just nice because then you don't have to be worrying about shape when you're adding your color. So I've got 1, 2, 3 different stems. They're all vertical. They are not perfectly spaced, but let's just go left to right, and then we'll make space like for them. So first we can make sure that we leave space for these ones on the left. So at least a finger, or maybe just shy of a finger next to it. And we can make this little stem come up. It can be straight, it can be curved. You're the boss of you. And then from here, I'm going to make it, once again, we're going to talk about the YMCA. Here's your head, here's your arms. And then I'm going to curve it a little bit this way. Don't actually draw the head on all of them, unless you want to. That'd be funny to me. I would laugh at you. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5. You do you. And they do not need to be the same shape. Basically what we're seeing is that they come out, out, and you can see straight lines in like 3 places, at least 2. And you're just fitting them in however you see fit, because all we're working on is chunking in color at different rates. So whatever feels good. I do want 3 though. So now I'm like, ooh, how am I going to fit that? I'm going to keep this one tight is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to add like one of the leaves down here. So that's my beginning. And you see I'm just using those spaces that I have. I will add a little one here because it's fun. We're just adding them in, load them in, see what feels good. Press lightly with that pencil so we can erase if we need, and that's all you need. And I'm going to come up like this, and I'm going to add, making sure I left space for them on the right side. Yeah, and then use what you've got. I could do this little stem coming over if I want. Gives me like one other opportunity for how to fit them. Notice I made these a little bit smaller, but that would make sense if this was a new start coming up. Not that it needs to make sense, because it doesn't. All right, and you'll notice the colors about this one. I did any colors I wanted. It looks happy, doesn't it? So also the colors that I used, like look, blue and orange, it does not matter. This one, you can tell I added this so late that it dried after, fully after. But we're experimenting. So did this one. So did this one. But I don't know that because I'm just chunking in the colors and seeing what happens. So really, this is hopefully a big lesson in observation for you and watching what happens when you place it right after the first one. Probably, keep in mind, the wetter it is, the more they're just going to blend. But really getting that drying time uneven, where this one's almost dry and you add this one. It just needs enough space to creep into the next. So, and actually look what happened here is I think the orange blended right into the blue, but this purple came around and went on top of the orange. It's nice to look at this and study it. So we're going to mix up some colors, and this is just a for fun thing. So we're going to play. I'm going to dip my brush into my water. First, I'm moving my pencil and my eraser out of the way. Otherwise, it just gets too messy. And I'm going to grab some water. Remember, you can spray your paints. And, but I can look at this if I want. I guess they're pastel, but they say have a little bit of brightness to them. I like the pink. So I took a wet brush and grabbed some of this paint and swiped it right here. If I like it the way it is, great. But if I want it lighter, watch this. I can even do another bit of it, clean out my brush, and add. And now I have 2 colors. Isn't that nice? I definitely want some blues. I think I'm going to work around just like playful colors. Think what you would find in the toddler section of a clothing department. Even I don't know what I'm going to say next, you guys. Let's get some green in there. So notice I'm taking a wet brush. I'm swiping my paint onto my palette, and then I'm adding water and mixing it around to make sure it's how I like it. I will remind you that in watercolor, the way we get our colors lighter is by adding water to them. And so that's what I'm doing here. And usually when we do our painting, we'll start with a lighter color and load in darker colors, but today we're just going to experiment with it generally, and we're going to see what happens. So I'm going to get purple. I got to get some purple in there. I think you guys have probably seen by now that I really do lean into that purple pink color. I love it. And I want yellow. So I'm cleaning my brush between all of the colors. And it's funny, my college son is here, so that's who you hear opening doors over and over right now. Okay, I got yellow on there, so I'm cleaning my brush in between colors, and then I'm always swiping onto the palette, adding water, making sure I like it before I move on to the next color. If you want some neutral kind of colors in there, you might grab this navy blue, which right below that lime green up top, so it's the second one down in the center. And if I'm going so fast that you're annoyed with me right now, you just push pause and relaxingly mix some colors and play with them. I just sometimes think that I might want a brown color, so I'm gonna have it on my puddles just in case. And I really do like this color, which is like one of those light oranges. So notice how I just played with colors for a minute and gave myself a lot of options for when I paint. I don't have to use these, but I can, and that feels nice to me. Okay, so this feels good. I'm all set with it. I'm gonna move these out of my way now. We'll get in here, and I'm just gonna have us read this one more time. Blooms or cauliflower effects, they're the same thing, happen when a wet area of paint comes into contact with a drier area, causing the wet paint to have a spreading effect in the drier paint. And so this just shows we need a drier paint and a wetter paint. And that's why we're gonna chunk these colors in and see what happens. So I'm gonna go left to right a little bit, and I'm going to have like a medium amount of water on here, but you can even differ how much water you have. So I'll just try to say what I'm doing as we go, but what we are doing is experimenting and observing. We'll simplify it to that. So I just grabbed some blue paint on here, and I'm gonna fill this one in. And I think I'm gonna come down the stem a little because I do wanna be doing the stem at the same time as much as I can. From here, I'm going to, actually, you know what I'll do is I'll paint another one because that's gonna give us where the drying time is different for both, right? And then I'm gonna clean my brush out, and I'm gonna find some of that green paint. I'm gonna do this one where I just touch it right to the base and fill in another one. So I have a lot of water, but what I'm guessing, and I'll just guess it out loud with you so you can hear my observations, is that if it's really wet, it's going to easily blend my colors. This first one needs to be drying. So I'm going to take out some of that water. And you are not limited to the colors you just made in puddles. You can for sure go into your paints. And we know that if we go into our paints instead of our puddle, we're going to get less water. Already I like what's happening here, so I'm going to zoom in for you to see. It looks like I'm going to get it here. So this is somewhat wet background, but I took some water out of it. And then for this next part, I went right into my paints, which really limited my water. And now you can see that layer number 1 is pulling layer number 2 through it. Let's observe my top one. The whole thing's wet. So it's blending really lovely, but I don't exactly want that. So I'm gonna lift some out. And remember, when this is wet, you can still play in it. So I'll just go right to my paint and add another color to the base. I'm gonna try to mostly just touch it versus assisting the blending, right? Look at that. I think that's gonna end up pretty cool. Okay, so a little more water on layer number 1, a little less water on layer number 2, and then we just watch. Okay, and I'm gonna fill in this one with this nice light pink, and because I think like that's what I'm banking on right here, is that a little less water on layer 1, so I just lifted some out by touching my brush to my towel and coming back and taking a little bit of that wetness out of there. And now I'm going to get into my paints. So I'm finding that layer number 1, and this is a lot of the times the case, layer number 1 needs to be from my puddle, and layer number 2 needs to be more from my paint because I can really limit the water that time. And by adding like the first color, second color, third color, I'm giving lots of opportunities for like to see that cauliflowering. Cauliflowering though, I mean, I don't ever, this is the first time I've ever tried to like intentionally create it. Well, no, that's not exactly true, but with the term, it's true. Usually though, I think what happens is I play with wet on wet, and I am starting with my first layer wetter, and I'm just trying to like load in some boldness with less water, and that is when you tend to see it. So I think my strawberry lesson from the beginning might have some of this as well. But it's when you're kind of carefree about it and you're just playing in your paints, you get just cool stuff. So I am just cleaning my brush and I'm changing the color of paints as I go. Ooh, I didn't want this to be pink next to that other one, so I'm gonna quickly adjust it. And I'm watching up here to see what's happening. I do have some cauliflowering, and then some of them are just blending. I think I'm gonna try one more layer because it's still wet and I can. Ooh, I pulled that blue right in, but I'm not mad about it. So I also want you to experiment with like, is this gonna stay dry or is it wet enough that it's actually going to pull that paint and turn it into cauliflowering? I don't know. So we watch and see. Isn't this so cool looking? I mean, I'd buy this at the store. I don't care what you put it on. If you put it on a cosmetic bag, a greeting card, a gift tag, like I'm here for it. Because this is so pretty. Now, I do want to get, I noticed that this one's drying and I don't really see like another color going in. So right now I went into my paints and I'm just gonna tap another color in at the base. And, you know, I can add more color here if I want to because it's still wet. So the reason I know I can do it is because I see it shining. But is that gonna blend it more than I want? I don't know. Who knew that you were gonna just watch a video today where you watch me guess on things? Just say my guesses out loud. Now, if I wanted these whole stems to dry at the same time, I might do this much more methodically. But since I'm not worrying about that today, I can just kind of move around however I want. I could try this one with, see how there's barely any water up here, it's like pretty dry. What happens if I put this dry paint first and clean out my brush and get a little bit of wet paint and add the wet paint and let it touch it? See, these experiments are helping you study watercolor. I'm going to zoom in a little on that one. Sweet, right? And it kept that really concentrated color at the base. This one's probably completely dry. I'm gonna work on top of it, but I think what's done is done here. It's funny. If I wanted to soften up the line between, I could clean my brush and dry it and take that damp brush and just kind of go over that line. So now no one will ever know that it dried first. And I need some blue, so now I'm looking at it like, ooh, what color do I want a little more of? Ooh, I was gonna do blue, but actually I don't want them right next to each other, so change of plans. Get some purple. And remember, we're trying for some blooms, if you care about that. I mean, otherwise now you know what they are, and maybe you don't want to try for them. I do think it's really fun, though, to kind of see what happens. And now I'll put some blue in there. All the way up here, I think. And I won't have it be too wet, because if I do, I think that that next color will just blend so nicely, and I don't want that. This second color I took from my paints, not my puddles. Nice, huh? So this effect right here, how I'm also taking that color right down into my stem, you can do this on any flower anytime. This would be the green from the stem maybe coming into a red flower, and then, oh, so beautiful. So something to play with. We learn how to not have it bleed for things like that, but why? When that color bleeds, to me, I want to look at it more. I'm not bothered by it. I think if you look at your own artwork the day after you paint, sometimes that's when you can look at it with fresh eyes and really see it differently. I think you can appreciate your own work a little more. Oops, this one didn't have a stem, so I just added it. And do you see at the base of this center one, if I got this a little wet now, then it'll soften up that transition from the green to it a little bit. It's not great, but it's okay. And I'm just playing with my colors now. I just mixed the navy blue with some purple. I like this. I found that you could just sort of watch paint dry on here, and that's what we learned was like the most boring thing on the planet, right? Like, it's like watching paint dry, but fun though, right? And now I just added, oh, you can't even see what I'm doing. Let me move it over. So I just added it to the edges this time, and I think we'll get some good cauliflowering here. Let me zoom out though. Ooh, it's so fun, isn't it? I love this one. I hope you're enjoying it. I can see that this one is still reflective, which means that if I want to add another color in, I can. And that gives us one more opportunity to see what happened between those. And later on, if I want to clean this up, I can do that with ink, if you decide you want to. Okay, I'm going to go dark color and add in a light color. So I have to work fast because dark colors do stain the paper really quickly. So very quickly, okay, there's probably too much. So I'm going to get a little bit of a darker color and get it in there. And I think this will be interesting to watch what happens. Sometimes, ugh, hate it. Sometimes cool. Hope you have something good going on after you're finished with this today. For some of you, maybe that's just sleep. And I like when these stems touch some wet paint if I can, but I keep forgetting about it, so. I'll do this light color now with a really dark. I'm gonna get navy blue. Let me zoom in on this one. I'm gonna get navy blue at the base of this. And I want enough water that it does move it a little bit. And we'll see what happens here. And then I'll do the stem as well. So this is one where you can dry it with the hairdryer, but remember I told you in another video too, oh wow, that is looking so cool. Remember I told you in another video though that if you actually let it dry, I think the slowness really does help those colors seep into the other ones. So instead of taking it to the dryer today, why don't we just look at it this way? And we'll just observe it a little bit now, noticing that some of them are still wet and some of them are dry. So up in the top, I can tell this cauliflowered a little. It more has color bleeds. I don't know, the cauliflowering is a very particular thing. I think I see it more here. Do you see that? But this is a cool variety of all of those things, and I think no matter which effect we're getting, it's beautiful. A little bit of cauliflowering here. It's kind of between bleeds and cauliflowering, and then this one, awesome, right? And I think the reason we think this one's awesome is we can really see it because it's such a high contrast. So this was day 28, blooms or cauliflowering. I hope that you found it helpful, and tomorrow we will talk about blotting clouds. If you want to share your artwork on my Facebook page, Audrey Shantz Art, I would love to see your work.